You can do it.
Did I ever mention I was terrified of heights? Okay, so we are going to actually be building something today. I'll bring you through the process of what we're building. We're going to be building a couple of bat boxes. You might have seen in a previous video I had mentioned a few strategies for dealing with the bug situation. Again, in the middle of the woods, there's going to be a lot of bugs, so we want to make sure that we're tackling that with a few different options, and that the first one that we're implementing is going to be bat boxes. The reason that we want to get this done sooner than anything else is because we're at the time of year where the bats are actually going to start coming out of hibernation soon. And when they look for places to roost for the year, it's usually in the early spring. So we want to make sure that we get these boxes up and ready to go, so that way they are available to move in as soon as those bats come out of hibernation. Before we do get too ahead of ourselves, let's take a look at the drawings here. These were provided by a website that I'll link down below, and it has the material list and some basic drawings here, but they're more detailed in the link. Now we need to gather the materials, so the caulking is very important to make sure it's waterproof, and then we are going to be applying a stain to it, and so just some cheap sponges will do the job. The other thing here is going to be the drill bit to punch a hole through the interior panels so the bats can travel in between each section, and of course some clamps to hold it all together. So here we are back at it. Hi, Dad. We're doing some more cutting. You can see that I'm taking extreme precaution with my safety sunglasses. So now that we have all of the interior panels cut, we can start putting the pass-through holes. I figured that it would probably be easy enough to clamp them all together and then just punch 2 holes straight through. The wood was catching a little bit more than I was expecting, and then when it got deep enough, it would actually catch the wood pucks inside of the bit. So that's, again, something that I hadn't thought of.
Oh, it's smoking.
I should have figured that it would be pretty difficult to go through in one pass, since, you know, we're stacking up 6 layers of wood, and the bit is only just as deep as the wood. So now that we have the panels all cut, we need to make sure that when the bats do move in, and I really hope they move in, that we need to make sure they can actually climb inside. So we're striking the wood to make sure that it has little grooves in it. We tried just scraping it with a saw blade. That gave really poor results. So we transitioned to striking it with a chisel and doing a few passes that way. That was much better. We were able to get nice deep cuts. And we did this on both sides of each sheet. So we had 6 interior sheets, and then we also had 4 exterior sheets, but we only did the one side for the exterior sheets. This actually turned out to be one of the harder parts of the project, at least physically, just because we had to put so much pressure when striking these pieces of wood. So this was something that we definitely felt the following day. Here I'm cutting out the blocks for the interior that create the gap in between the panels on the inside, giving the bats somewhere to roost, get all nice and cozy. I made sure to measure out all the different pieces that I would need to cut, and then used the templates to cut the rest at the same size. We cut out the support for the roof at an angle to make sure it's flush when we attach it. This is also the same board that we're going to be using for the side panels, so we had to do that same cut but without an angle. And then we also made a slight indent cut for the gap on the back to make sure that there was some airflow. We want to make sure that the bats have some way to regulate their temperature. With all the wood cut, now we can do a dry fit, making sure it all fits together, kind of like a big Lego, but you're not really attaching it. It's just kind of sitting together. But this makes sure that everything that we cut is to size, and that before we start screwing and gluing, that it all fits. So at this point, you can kind of see it coming together. There's the slats in the middle where the bats will climb into, and we have the panels on the front and the back to close it up. And then you can see the one that I'm just putting on here. There's also another air gap just for that airflow again. Yeah, we do need to make some more cuts for the inside and for the front and the back inside to make sure that the bats can, again, grip and climb. But yeah, you can see that this is essentially it. Without the screws, that's one bat box all cut.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, we figured this out a little bit too late, using a grinder to make those ridges for the bats to cling onto. Much cleaner, much better job. Much easier. So we basically have everything cut. So now we've dry fitted all of the pieces together, and it actually looks like the final product. We just need to glue it all together after we stain it. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to go into a warm place finally, and we'll make sure that they're all nice and clean and dry. We'll stain them, let them sit for a bit before we start attaching pieces together, screwing them together. So we'll go do that now.
Shying away from the camera? Yeah. Oh.
Here you'll see that we are staining everything. The inside, the outside, we want it to be protected from the weather. As I understand it, the bats also appreciate the darker tones. They don't necessarily care about colors, but they do prefer darker shades. So that's what we're going to be doing here, making sure that everything is nice and dark. So just giving some final touch-ups here, where we want a little bit of extra on the outside because that's where it's going to be affected by the weather the most. Also, I only had just a tiny bit left in the can, so I'm going to maximize that so none goes to waste. And that will be it for now. There is, of course, the assembly that's left, but we're going to let it dry. And while it's doing that, we're just going to have a nice meal. So we will see you after that. Now that we have everything all nice and cut, it's just going to be Legos from here. I'm going to organize them into their appropriate parts, and then we can start throwing them together.
Yeah, one roof here, and the other here.
Great. So we have the back plate and the front plate. You can see here that we have the angle cut. So this will be the outside and the inside. The inside has these grooves cut so that bats can actually climb and hang on to something while they're inside. So might be able to see it a little bit more clearly here. So we got each chamber is separated by one of these, which has grooves in it so that the bats can hang on. Can kind of see him starting to put things together here. On the inside, I think I'm just going to stick with glue because I don't actually have enough screws, unfortunately. I think maybe just me failing to either read the instructions correctly, or it could be a failing of the instructions, but I'm going to assume it's my fault. So let's put these together like so. By the time this all comes together, it's going to be clamped for a bit, so I think that the glue will be sufficient. We're now going to start drilling some pilot holes so that we can make sure that when we screw it together, we're not going to crack any of the wood. A lot of this wood is pretty thin, so I want to make sure that we're being careful. The next step is going to be sealing it, so that's where this comes in. And then in combination with some wood glue, should be all set. Okay. Well, that's one done then. If we can, I'd also like to do a little bit around the screws on the top, just to make sure that they're watertight as well. Now this is where the battery died on my mic, but I'll just fill in with the voiceover. You can see that we are caulking all of the edges, and in addition to the edges, I also wanted to make sure that we sealed any of the holes around the screws. So this thing should be really watertight, and it needs to be. It's going to be out in the open, and I want to make sure that it can weather any weather. So yeah, same idea for both of these, just getting them all nice and tidied up. I'm trying to make it look nice as much as possible. And then we will put on a bracket on each of these so that way we can have a nice easy mount, or so I thought. And then we will head out and get these up in a tree. Now that the boxes are all together, they're sealed, they're ready to go, we're going to load these into my car and we're going to take them to the lot itself. Once on site, we unloaded the car, ladder, hardware, bat boxes, and started to figure out how we were going to get these up there. Yeah. They needed to be at least 10 feet above the ground.
Yeah, how do you get up there?
Trying to think of how to best carry this up.
Probably the way I carried it in, just
yeah,
or that way.
I think I should be okay. Like this will have 3 points. So the first plan was essentially wing it and see what happens. This is not safe. I do not recommend following in my footsteps here. If I could have set up a harness, that would have been perfect. However, you can essentially take this as what not to do in your OSHA videos. The real issue here is the angle that we're at. Once I get to the top of this ladder, the tree is actually overhanging a little bit. When I'm pushing to get this thing mounted, I'm actually pushing myself away from the ladder, and that is terrifying. So, you know what? I figured we'll just regroup, come down, and try again with a different strategy.
Knots, but there's one on each side. Oh yeah, we're not gonna wrap around that.
I think I'm gonna go like this.
Yes.
Next plan, once again, just get it up there and hold it with my face. First, I had pre-drilled a couple of screws on the bottom because there was no way that I was going to be able to reach the top where the bracket is to get these screws in. So I've pre-drilled 2 screws in the bottom so that we can get those in, and then we'll get the top after to really secure it. But you'll see that I'm struggling quite a bit because, again, I only have so many hands, and I'm working above my center of mass. I'm pressing this heavy thing up against the tree, and then I'm also trying to figure out how to use a drill to, again, push into these screws, apply force. There's no way. So I was lucky enough that my dad just came up and set the screws for me. And then that way, at least it's secured enough.
Good there.
Yeah. That's okay. I think it's holding. If you can go down, then I can screw the rest. Yeah, go down and then I'll grab it after. Oh. Okay. Need a second. Oh. It's not fun.
No.
It's gonna have we still had the top bracket, which was quite a bit higher up now that we managed to mount the bottom part. We had to reset the ladder so that we could actually reach. And so, of course, resting the ladder on this very secure bat box being held on by a couple of screws was the obvious choice. But in truth, probably the only real option to even get to that point. It's in. Oh, it's the hardest thing I've done for a while. Let's do it again.
Buy a place in the country, they said. It'll be fun.
Once that one was done, I felt so much better because, well, first of all, it was just a traumatizing experience. But also, I knew that the next one was going to be much easier because the tree was angled the opposite direction. And I had that experience of what we need to do.
You can do it.
Did I ever mention I was terrified of heights? Luckily, this time I was able to rest it somewhat comfortably before needing to put in the screws. So I was actually able to do that part myself, holding the bat box and getting those first couple of screws in. And then after resetting the ladder once again, I needed to get high enough to see where to put the screw, but then also I needed to get a little bit lower so that I could still have enough general force to be able to push the screw in. I know it didn't look like it there, but eventually I got it.
Good. Mission accomplished.
Yeah. Let's hope they work. So, after all of that immense stress, pressure, anxiety, and fear, just mostly fear, it is done. They have been mounted. I am so happy that they are up there. And yeah, I hope that you've enjoyed watching this process. Hopefully it wasn't nearly as stressful for you as it was for me. But yeah, really happy to share this, and just wanted to say thank you for watching. And I'll see you next time.